Hi everybody, Bro Movies, which is our new video podcast where we review some of our favourite movies from the last 30 years. Hi, I'm Gavin. This is
James.
Father and son, and we're looking forward to passing on some of our movie memories to you all. Our first movie in our review programme is Point Break, an epic movie from 1991, directed by Catherine Bigelow, produced also by James Cameron, her husband at the time. And maybe James might give us some background to that movie now.
Yeah, so basically this movie was made in 1991 at the height of the action film genre, and when you had a lot of buddy cop movies and, you know, they were kind of failures and they were struggling to get back on their feet, and then this film came along, and the story of the film came from the producer Rick King, and he was on a beach just walking about and he saw surfers, and he was reading this newspaper about this article about how there were robberies, and he was on this beach and he was looking at these surfers, and all of a sudden he thought, what if these surfers were robbers? How would that work out, and what would that lead to, and what would come from that concept? And he brought that to I believe W. Peter Liff, who then was waiting tables at the time. He was a waiter. So in the evening he wrote the script, and he wrote it and took it to Largo Entertainment, who liked his script, and it was the first film that they set up with 20th Century Fox agreeing to distribute it. And
maybe on the history, James, I think maybe try and place where the actors were in their career at that point in time, James.
So Keanu Reeves, of course, at that time was really well known for Bill and Ted, The Excellent Adventure, and had done, of course, this is before The Matrix, this is before John Wick, and some of his more well-known roles, and at the time he was looking for a very serious role. Bill and Ted was quite comedic and in the vein of a science fiction film, but with Point Break he would have been able to really try being in a more serious role, really. And he read for the film, and I'm presuming he liked the script, and he signed on, and yeah, he would go on to great fame with The Matrix, and then a few years later with Speed.
But one of the central actors in the film, and one of the most wonderful characters in it, is Bodhi, obviously played by Patrick Swayze. And I think what's ironic about the film is he doesn't appear in the movie until almost 20-25 minutes into the movie. It's very like, I think, Orson Welles in The Third Man, for example. But I think on that, maybe place for people where Patrick Swayze was in 1991 as regards his career.
Yeah, so with Patrick Swayze, he was obviously high off Dirty Dancing, no pun intended, and had just been in Ghost.
Yeah.
And he was, in his 30s at that time. He'd also done Roadhouse.
A much loved movie, I must say. We might revisit that later on. A marvellous movie, Roadhouse.
Talk about Michael Kamen's score for that.
Yeah.
Who's, great. And we must mention him more in this channel. He's one of the greatest composers of all time.
And then you had an actor who we both, I think, feel produced one of the best performances of his wonderful career, Gary Busey.
Oh, yeah.
A marvellous actor. And I think on this role, what's funny about Gary Busey is his name in the movie, Angelo Papas, and he just really is
kind of Mexican, Spanish.
Yeah, it does, James. And I think it's just an amazing role, and a role he carries out very well. Everything about him is awkward. I think the first time we see him, I think he's in a swimming pool.
He's in a swimming pool, he's training, and he sees Keanu Reeves just kind of walking down to meet him, and he says he's talking in this big rambling speech, and Keanu Reeves just kind of walked up and is obviously very confused, and he comes up and says, "How you doing, Angelo Papas? Welcome to SeaWorld, kid," and just jumps into the water and starts screaming. So. Yeah.
But maybe if we come back to the movie, you've also got Larry Petty, who at the time was growing in strength as an actress with her wonderful big eyes. She's the leading role of Tyler in this movie. And then you've got wonderful actors who have small roles in the movie, such as John McGinley, I think.
Yes, John McGinley was also in 1991 in Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Don't remember that one, James.
Point Break is a much better movie. Go watch Point Break. Do not watch Highlander 2, The Quickening. But no, he's in that movie. Obviously, he's a villain, and he was also in Scrubs.
He went on to great fame in Scrubs, I think. And
for some reason, I don't know why.
But I suppose that's the nature of these TV programs.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we'll move into the movie. So the movie opens with a rain song. Keanu Reeves going through his detective training program, where he wins out in shooting, and then his immortal name in the movie, Johnny Utah, which is is much used, and he's congratulated on doing well in the course. I think he decides to join an undercover team in the detective force
And he
in
meets
the LA area.
Papaz and John McGinley comes in, and
there's a spate of bank robberies taking place with a gang called the ex-presidents. And I think one of the early scenes in the movies, you see the ex-presidents robbing. I think it's Carter, Johnson, Nixon, and Reagan. I think are the four presidents. And even that as well, James. The fact that the robbers are ex-presidents is possibly a play on politics and
sort of a satire.
And particularly one would recognise the feature of Nixon, particularly who does a lot of the speaking during the robberies, and again, is that an example of in a way laughing at the politicians?
Yeah, and especially the film does have a lot of comedy, but it never feels borderline slapstick. It always has quite a serious tone. The stakes are high for Johnny Utah.
Well, except when they pull down their pants and show off their bums as they're running away.
When they're loading the guns and they say it's rock and roll.
Yeah. But I think, and then the scene goes on, and that's recorded. And I think again, Gary Busey, Angelo Pappas' character, then lets Johnny Utah know that his view is that it's a gang of ex-surfers who are carrying out these robberies.
Yeah, he's the first one that kind of noticed that, and then tells that to Utah, and then they come into, because then they join forces, and then he goes undercover. Obviously, he's a surfer, and basically their friendship strengthens.
It does, I think Johnny uses a slightly, how would you say, underhand way to get into the gang by pretending his parents had died.
That was quite a horrible thing to do, and there's a lot of debate about the morality of that, and was that a right thing to do, and if he had...
Because he knew that Tyler from their police file that both their parents had died, I think, in a plane crash.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he gets into... have surfing lessons, I think, with Tyler, who's a former girlfriend, I think, of Bodie. Didn't see the Patrick Swayze character?
They've had semi-relationship many years earlier. And Laurie Petty, by the way, went on to appear in Free Willy a few years later.
And Tank Girl.
But she never really reached big heights than like most of the actors in the movies, except for John McGinley, who was reduced to starring in a hospital comedy.
Well, he did well from it, I suppose. But coming back to the movie, I suppose, James, I think you then have, of the many wonderful set pieces in the movie, is after one of the surf training lessons, you have a famous American football set piece on the beach. And this is where I think Bodie and Johnny Utah come together and get to know each other better. And did Johnny have a football past in his past life?
Yeah, in the film it's mentioned that he has a football past until he had a knee injury, which will come into play later in the story, and that basically affects him throughout the movie. And that's why everyone knows about him, because he used to play football and he was probably on his way to having a really big career, and he kind of just gave it up because of that injury. And
exactly, but it also he needs to balance this life with his job as a detective. So while going undercover, because of the samples they found on some of the robberies, they went to another beach, and I think there he is set upon while showering by another gang. Isn't that right? I think in that gang there's someone quite famous in that gang. I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers, isn't he? Anthony Kiedis. So, but he's saved from that...
from Bodie, and then they go meet up, and he invites him to his house, and they have a very big party, and they talk about everything, go surfing, and then Keanu Reeves obviously then sleeps with Laurie Petty, because they can't just be friends, because this is a Hollywood film, people, where stuff has to go down. I
think during that as well, some of the scenes beside the fire there at that party and later parties, it shows Bodie's view on society, where he rails against capitalism. He talks of
the changes of society, and that he's fighting against the system, and how he thinks the government have an iron fist in everything, which probably isn't too far from the truth, but he definitely... And you see throughout the movie, he doesn't just go around shooting people with a gun, and he's very civilized, and he doesn't really give a damn about the money. He just wants that sort of freedom, and he's fighting against the system and rebellion, really, more than financial gain.
And I think his views are still as relevant today as they were back in 1991.
Nearly 30 years
30
later,
years.
So.
My happy memory of this movie, James, is I watched it on a ferry going to a...
You would have been about 16 at the time.
16 and going to a school camp. I watched it with my best friends in the ferry, and we thought one of the greatest films we've ever seen. And still our view, and it's such a happy memory, and it's a wonderful film, and I know it's the same for so many other people. So then moving on to the story then, I think the gang develops on, and Johnny Utah gets more and more into the gang. But then a couple of events occur which cause Johnny's status as a detective to come to light. The one is another very great case where the detectives stake out a house for trying to arrest a number of gang members there.
There's a shootout, and then Keanu Reeves, of course, tackles this guy and is about to punch him, and he puts his head. He's right next to a lawnmower, and he's about to decapitate his head and kill him.
Then who saves the money? The
K-Bad, like, shoots him and says, "Speaking to the mic, asshole."
It's marvellous. Again, Gary Busey has just so many great lines.
He was 47 in this.
He was. I think you make a great point, James. I think about this movie of lots of things. You've got Gary Busey. The character name looks totally wrong for him. He's probably 10 years too old for the role.
It's kind of much older than Keanu, yet they get along really well.
I think anytime anyone shot in the movie, it looks like they burst a McDonald's tomato ketchup packet. It doesn't look like real blood.
Yeah.
But it all just hangs together, really.
It works in the context of the movie. If this was another script or another action film, it wouldn't work. And
so then if we break it on a little bit, I suppose, I think again Johnny's status as a detective begins to
come to light, and
more and more. Tyler finds out, didn't she?
Yeah, and she tries to shoot him, obviously, and she leaves, and he's really upset. And then Bodhi forces him or blackmails him to go. But I think skydiving. But just before that, I think the ultimate outing of Johnny as a detective occurs when there's another legendary and wonderful set piece, I think was filmed mainly around Santa Monica, which is the staking out of the bank on ultimately their second last robbery, which is where Gary Busey and Keanu Reeves are two characters. Sandwiches.
They're having that meatball sandwich. I think he wanted
two.
He had two.
For a sturkey cemetery. Oh. It's time for lunch.
Angelo, it's 10:30.
Right around that corner, there is a sandwich shop. They sell meatball sandwiches. Best I've ever tasted. Would you go get me two? Come on, partner. Two.
Thank you.
Utah, give me two.
And James, I think the car chase then begins with poor old Angelo Pappas's bruised and battered car. Yeah. And I think it crashes nearly straight away, doesn't it, James?
It does, yeah. Like most action films with the cars, just, blows up, or a stunt guy falls 50 feet.
Yeah. And then you have a foot chase then. I think Johnny Utah tries to catch the car then and does catch up with the gang's car at a garage, which is now, I think, a cycling superstore.
It is, and then Patrick Swayze, Keanu tackles Patrick Swayze and he's on fire.
And Ronald Reagan uses a blowtorch, I think, using a petrol pump to burn the car. I think on some blooper shows as well, I think the fact that Gary Busey unloads so many bullets and they seem to hit no one seems to come up on blooper shows a lot as well. But then the foot chase then begins, James, and I think again this is one of the many magnificent parts of the movie, which is
one of the most iconic. Really, it's like really, a lot of people talk about like the best chases in film history, and this is pretty much right up there. And there's even a scene where Patrick Swayze throws a dog at Keanu Reeves. It's so absurd. You're thinking, why the hell would he do that? I mean, it's a dog, But
animal rights people will be all over this as well in the current times.
Peter probably sued the movie.
So in the back streets of Santa Monica, they chase through, and then sadly Johnny Utah's knee injury comes back again.
Yes,
James.
And that's mentioned earlier in the film, and you think, it's blind foreshadow. It's foreshadowing what is to come during.
When he jumps over a viaduct and they jump in and Johnny's knees go and Bodhi is on the fence. And I think again, James, Bodhi now has a chance, or Johnny Utah has a chance to shoot Bodhi, but it doesn't choose to do so. And then in one of the most legendary scenes, you see him shooting in the air.
which is parodied in Hot.
The movie then Hot Fuzz, I think, James, isn't it?
Yeah, in Hot Fuzz, there's a scene where they watch Point Break, and then there's a scene where Nick Frost has his gun and he's, fires it in the air because he has a chance to shoot Simon Pegg because he's about to kill his dad, and he doesn't because, they're friends. And that's kind of quite similar to the scene in Point Break, the homage, but I think they're two very different.
Yeah,
very different
and I think we have that clip coming up. Right, James, and then the movie moves on with this Johnny Utah's identity now fully aware of to the gang, and they kind of seek to capitalise that by taking Tyler into captivity with the dastardly Bodie and particularly dastardly Roach.
Yeah, so then after Keanu goes skydiving with them, then he goes and they show her a video of Tyler in captivity with Roach, and they say we got one last robbery, and so he goes with them on the last robbery, and he is, obviously his other guys are with him, and an officer sees him and shoots him, and he's wearing a bulletproof vest, and then Bodie, unfortunately, some of his friends pass away.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bloodbath, isn't it, James?
And then he kind of snaps, and he's normally, he's very distraught and shocked.
Yeah.
And he punches Keanu Reeves.
He does. He knocks him out, I think. He puts him with his gun. So when poor Johnny then wakes up, he's having a bad time of things. He wakes up, and our old friend John McGinley and a couple of his mates are ready to handcuff Johnny.
Yes.
But who comes to save the day to him then again?
And he proceeds to knock out McGinley.
Yeah, he does. Poor McGinley's on the floor. Yeah, great scene.
Yeah.
And then they leave in another bruised and battered car onto Santa Monica Airport, where I think Johnny remembers that Bodie was to make his escape from there.
Yeah.
And again, Santa Monica Airport is where another Titanic scene occurs with Angelo Pappas' sad demise, James.
Yeah, that's quite tragic, and of course the audience has grown to become very close with him, and he's a very great character throughout the movie, and but he has no more use in the story anymore.
Yeah.
He'd just kind of be in the sidelines. He wouldn't really, you can't see him fitting into any other scene really.
No.
It's really just Johnny Utah and Bodie.
And so there's lots more McDonald's tomato ketchup in the scene as well, I think, James. But as you would expect,
it's a shame they didn't show any Big Macs in a blender.
Big Macs in and a blender in.
The camera
so Pappas goes down fighting as you'd expect from such a hero in the movie. Johnny then makes his way onto the plane, which is making its way to Mexico, I think, to make their getaway, where Roach is waiting with Tyler. I think, unfortunately, it then becomes apparent that there's going to be they're going to jump from the plane.
Yeah, and they didn't bring a parachute for him.
Well, they didn't expect him to be on the plane, I suppose, James. Yeah. So there then is a bit of a predicament for Johnny.
Yeah, he has no parachute, and he has to jump out of the plane because, when you're skydiving, you have to jump out of the plane. And
just for younger viewers, James, what you probably see here, just to explain for them, you probably see Bodie become a little bit of more ruthless near the end of the movie, I think.
Sort of is so darkens really.
It does really, doesn't it?
But it feels very natural, of course, with any person who, that's a very hard thing, especially in someone like him. He kind of brushed everything off, and he doesn't realise if you live a lifestyle like this, an outlaw kind of lifestyle, death is unfortunately one of the main things, And
even for him, money does have a function, I suppose, as well, because you can even see he makes sure the money bag makes it down to the ground.
And
even
left his friend to die.
Lets his friend to die with no burial.
But like I said in that earlier scene, you do see the loss of his friends probably twists him a little. So that can be expected, but
can be, James. Great point. We then move to another outrageous scene in the movie, of which there's many, where Johnny Utah decides to jump from a plane knowing that Tyler's on the ground and most likely will be killed if he doesn't make his way down. So I think Bear Grylls is a bit of a fan of this scene.
Yeah, he did scene for that. I think it was at GQ or Variety a year or two back, where he reviewed films and survival films like The Revenant and how accurate were they, and he read a scene from Point Break and he says, "This is one of my favourite movies and I love it, but the scene is total bonkers." And gave it like a 1 out of 5 for accuracy, because he obviously went to Mount Everest. and
he'd probably break his neck when he landed into
Bear Grylls actually did do a skydiving stint when he was like 25 and broke his back, and thankfully he was able to walk again. But he definitely didn't think that scene was accurate at all.
Agreed, James. I think what Catherine Bigelow, as a female director, of course, goes on to win the Best Director Oscar for The Hurt Locker, the first and only female to do so.
Which is great, but also shocking.
Shocking, I agree,
You think
James.
there should be more, and
Absolutely.
it should have caught up by now, and the industry's saying, we're going to have more women in these roles, but nothing has happened, really.
But now this year I think we have 2 female nominees. But they coming down to the skydive, they're both hurtling to the ground. And again, what Catherine Bigelow really brings out is probably the affection between the 2 characters, which you see where I think Johnny Utah decides not to shoot Bodhi and throws away his gun and pulls the emergency cord.
Yeah, tough decision to make, but you know, it's Bodhi or Tyler, really.
Bodhi or Tyler is exactly it, James.
I actually wonder what happened to them after that final scene. Did they stay together a year later? Did they get
well, he was now a surfer dude, as he said.
Which he didn't have a wedding ring or anything.
No, he didn't.
And he had like mutton chops in the next scene.
He did in the bad dress sense as well. So they land on the ground. Roach is there in his open top van, drops Tyler, and they pick off the money off their dead colleague and leave their dead colleague there. And again, they set off into the distance then. So the movie then moves on, and probably some might say a more normal action movie might end at that stage. But Johnny Utah, notwithstanding his name, remembers a lot, and I think he remembered the 50-year wave.
He does, and like I said, that's another plot point where it should come into play, you know, later on in the story if it's mentioned, like exposition, and it is. And Bodhi mentions he wants to do the 50-year storm, and so Johnny drives out in rain-soaked Australia to go and... Yeah,
to see Torquay West Beach or Torquay South Beach. You see a rain-sodden again, of course, Point Break being Point Break. Keanu isn't wearing wet gear, he's wearing an all denim outfit.
Is it a grey denim jacket he's wearing?
And matching pants, I think. Couldn't be worsely dressed for the situation. So he is
Keanu Reeves.
He is Keanu Reeves. Cool, a wonderful performance. So he makes his way down to the beach, and who's there standing facing those gigantic waves?
And he comes up to him and kind of starts taunting him, and you know, he handcuffs him, and then the police know he's there, so they have a helicopter come in, and then people they're starting to storm the beach, and then Bodhi's like, "Please let me go. This means the world to me, and I." He
kind of handcuffs him by accident, or not handcuffs him during a struggle. Then doesn't he? Yeah.
And then he says, "You know, please let me go," and Johnny can see it in his eyes that this is his life.
There's cliffs to my left and cliffs to my right, and I can't swim to New Zealand. He says to Johnny, and I think he decides then to release the cufflinks or the handcuffs, and I think he then issues the fantastic finishing line in Spanish, "Voy con Diaz," which is in the arms of the gods. So I think in a way it reminds me a little bit, I suppose, James, of for example, a scene like the last scene in Casablanca, where the 2 great characters.
You think they could, you know, maybe beat again, and
they'd be very happy. They'd be surfing every day, you know, wearing all denim down to the beach. And I think ultimately it's a wonderful relationship between the 2 that sustains its way through the movie. And ultimately, Bodhi gets his final wish. I think
he does.
I think you see him falling off the board, I think, James.
He unfortunately passes away, and then Keanu Reeves takes out his FBI badge and shows him the water. And
I think he mentioned the love of surfing. He surfs every day, didn't he? Yeah.
You're never too old to take up surfing, kids.
No. Always remember that as well.
But I would have thinking Keanu Reeves would have been fired earlier, considering, you know, he got meatballs during a robbery.
I think so,
He punched his senior officer. Resisted arrest. I mean, that all is quite a fire report.
Participate in a robbery.
Yeah.
And I think on an overall summary, James, it's a film that you and I both really love. We've watched a number of times, and I think it stands as a great testament to all the actors and Catherine Bigelow and all her producers as well, who stuck out this movie as well. And it re-engineered the buddy movie, because 1991 was a very strong year for movies, like Silence of the Lambs, other movies. It was a very, very strong. Exactly, James. Great point.
And this big kind of cultural change that a horror film was getting all the big Oscars. That still hasn't happened before. But with Point Break, it wasn't really recognised for its achievements or anything, because the Academy don't really give Oscars to action films, really.
They don't. And let's be honest, some of the lines are pretty cheesy, and I don't think Academy voters will be enjoying them.
No.
But I think just maybe we've gone through Catherine Bigelow went on, and some of the younger viewers, I think Patrick Swayze, you'd probably say he'll probably hit peak around 1991.
He had done Dirty Dancing, Ghost.
I think he went on to do films like Donnie Darko afterwards. Had a strong career.
Yeah.
I think ill health set in then in the 2000s.
Unfortunately, he was only in his 60s when he passed away, and his wife now is a jewelry designer. And she's married to someone else now. But it must have been very difficult for her, and obviously his family and fans and everyone around the world that he touched. And really,
Patrick was also a great singer as well. You remember that song?
This is wonderful.
From a marvellous song. And then on the other actors as well, you have Keanu Reeves obviously went on to have a very, very strong career, and John McGinley we talked about as well.
Highlander 2, he was reduced to a television role in Scrubs, but he was in Highlander.
Pays the bills. Highlander 2, And I think on that, I think what we're trying to do with Bro movies, everybody, is review movies that we love and adore. And that's what we sought to do on today's show.
Films a chance, and films that no one else is daring to talk about, bringing these kind of forgotten films to light, which is important in today's era where the term cult film doesn't really exist, because how can it be a cult film if everyone knows about it? But
so next week, James, our next episode, we're going to try and review a wonderful film, Lost Boys.
Yes, that was directed by Joel Schumacher, written by Jeffrey Baum, who wrote Inner Space, Indiana Jones, and stars Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Kiefer Sutherland, a small role from Alex Winter, Diane West, Edward Herrmann, a lot of really talented
marvelous
actors.
Lines, marvelous scenes, a bit outrageous, a bit funny, a bit quirky,
very creepy,
but a marvelous movie. And again, we're trying to bring this to the attention. And we can't forget, James, an outstanding soundtrack.
I know Cry Little Sister is your favourite song.
I won't start singing it, James.
He does not stop singing this song.
We'll be singing it next week. So
we won't.
That's what Bro movies. We really, really hope you've enjoyed some of the clips, some of the artwork.
Thank you so much for watching.
Please subscribe and we'll follow us, and we promise to upload some and review some great movies such as Highlander, Lost Boys, and some of the great movies that have been unheralded, but which we all love and adore, and just trying to pass on some of that affection and love to others, so they can embrace it as well. So everybody, thank you very, very much. Thank you for enjoying the show, Bro Movies. And we very much look forward to hopefully talking to you all soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.